I've been very hesitant to talk about leaks that get redacted from companies because of copyright, not copyright strikes, but strikes for whatever reason on YouTube that they decide to use because they don't want people talking about it. But this information was accidentally published by SEGA. So they did it themselves. They put it out there. And as someone who has a vested interest in the gaming industry, I do feel like it's my duty to report this information to you guys. And if it gets my channel taken down for doing that, well, damn it. I feel like there are bigger problems in this world than that. But anyways, let me zoom in on this tiny writing here. SEGA accidentally makes sales data public for 11 major games. And this comes to us from Mike Straw on Insider Gaming. And they said, it appears that someone at SEGA forgot how to properly redact data from a PDF, making sales data for 11 major games publicly available. In a presentation document for its annual management meeting, SEGA attempted to block out years of sales data for a number of its games. Instead, however, the company simply put a gray overlay on top of the data without preventing the information from being accessed. Press X if you feel like it was a DEI hire that put this together. This information includes sales numbers for a number of games over the last 6 fiscal years, including 3 Sonic titles, 2 Like a Dragon games, and more. Key takeaways from the sales data, which you can see for yourself below, are that Persona 5 Royal continues to be a major seller for the company, selling 7.25 million copies over the last 6 years. And that there's still a demand from players for Sonic games like Sonic Frontiers, which has 4.57 million, and Sonic Superstars, which is 2.43 million, have both sold well since their respective launches. And I got to be honest, when I saw these sales numbers, they were way higher, like across the board, than I was expecting them to be. Maybe not for the Persona one, but that was still higher. Maybe not way higher, but higher than I was thinking. So this was, before I even show it, this was the presentation that's being referenced here. And it talks to the investors' targeted earnings base and image of profit. And then right here, full game unit sales of major IPs, stably launched titles utilizing major IP. This is where it was listed, and it has now been updated saying some content is currently under adjustment. And then they move on to the other stuff in the presentation. But right here is where it was initially located. And then we go over to install base, which is where I first found the information. And they said SEGA leaked 6 years of sales numbers for Sonic, Persona, SMT, Like a Dragon, and Total War. This comes from page 25 and the link here. SEGA failed to properly redact the file. And we got Persona 5 Royal, including remastered version. Fiscal year 20 sold 1,030,000 copies. Second year, a very respectable 700,000 copies. In the second year, getting 3/4 of what you sold the first year is impressive. Now, this is, remember, units sold, not how much money they made from it. Typically, as we all know, games that are out for a few months, especially if you're like Ubisoft or in this case, SEGA, games typically go on sale, sometimes substantially, even a year afterwards. So you could theoretically have the same amount of sales and make half the amount of revenue or less than that, depending on what the sales were. But still, a unit sold is still a unit sold. And this is over 2 million units of Persona 5 sold in the first 3 fiscal years is an incredible number. But then you get to fiscal year 23 and you're like, holy crap. Okay, so this one clearly includes re-releases or multi-platform or massive sales. And same for fiscal year 24, fiscal year 25. Insane amount of sales volume for Persona 5 Royal to have 7.25 million total sales. These are numbers that very rarely get out there to the public for people to actually see and talk about. And you actually wonder why that is. We were talking about this earlier on SNH, and I am of the opinion of the reason why companies don't want to show these kind of numbers is because they don't want their next games to come out and people ask what the sales numbers are for those and find out they sold less, because then it's deemed a failure compared to the original game that was sold before it. Moving on, we got Sonic Frontiers with a total of 4.57 million units. Sonic Team Racing, 3.5 million. Like, these are a lot of copies of a game being sold. Now, Team Sonic Racing, that was a game that, if I recall correctly, that was also available on not just Steam and console, but also iOS. And there were a lot of people that played Sonic Team Racing on their iPads. Total War, Three Kingdoms, that is a crap ton more sales than I would have expected. 3.2 million. Yakuza, Like a Dragon, 2.86 million. Sonic Superstars, 2.4. Total War, Warhammer 3, 2.3. Shin Megami Tensei 5, including Vengeance, 2.1. Persona 3 Reload, over 2 million. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, 1.6. Like a Dragon, Gaiden, the man who erased his name, almost 1 million. So insane amount of sales volumes for a lot of games that, like I said, I can see it coming from Persona 5. Makes sense. Sonic Frontiers was a bit of a surprise. I would have thought that would be more closer to like 2 million. So 4.5 is blowing that out of the water. I actually would have thought Sonic Team Racing would have been above Sonic Frontiers. So that is surprising to me that it has 3.5. I would have thought this would have had the 4.5 million sales on it. And everything else kind of falls in line. But again, like I said earlier, higher across the board than I would have expected for a company like Sega that does still put out games that sell in the millions consistently, which is impressive. Back to the Insider Gaming article. So everything that I covered basically with the sales of these games, and I got to be honest, like I said, higher than I expected it to be, but at the same time, I would have liked to see more leaked out of this. It was only up through fiscal year 2025, and it wasn't even, as far as I understand, the entire fiscal year 2025. I would have loved to see Pirate Yakuza numbers. I'd be very curious to find out what those would look like relative to Yakuza Like a Dragon, because looking at the sales of this one, fiscal year 2020, when it first launched, I would think Like a Dragon would undersell Pirate Yakuza by a tremendous amount, because from what I've seen, Pirate Yakuza had a massive focus when it was coming out. People were like, oh, this reminds me of Black Flag from Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft, except like new updated graphics and a more like interesting and intricate storyline that's on a paradise island. And I saw so many people talking about it, and that's one of those games I really wanted to find out what the numbers were, and that relative to what was sold before. But like I said, that's why they don't give the numbers out, because if they did, then people would be able to compare them and contrast them. And they want to be able to control the narrative, not be transparent, tell you less, and don't get this information out there. But once it gets out there, the cat's out of the bag. And this is something that you rarely ever see from a video game company, and kind of like catch them in the buff, like, oh, dang, we actually see the actual numbers here, and we can base not just what Sega is doing with these numbers on their games, but also what other companies are doing based off of what Sega's games are too. So curious stuff that got leaked out by someone that clearly had no idea what the hell they were doing. And it's crazy to me, going back to the PowerPoint presentation, like how you could possibly screw up the most important part is insane to me, because nothing gets by gamers. Nothing. Like if you put this out there for investors, there's going to be a gamer that looks for it, finds it, and tries to open up what you had underneath it, and they'll find it. So anyways, I'll leave that one there.